years, ladies and gents, I've built a network with purpose. It's not always about investing in property. It's about creating cash flow. It's about starting businesses. It's about feeding families. It's about living your why, living your purpose.
Standing here today feels like a full circle moment, a moment that honors not just an award I received, but a journey that reshaped my life, my leadership, and my vision of impact.
I don't think that there is a single one event which captures the imagination of an investor like an event like this.
I want to see people gain confidence and actually be able to invest in properties and really gain a meaningful impact in their lives and be able, with confidence, to come out and invest and get more involved in the economy and create opportunities for themselves.
We're so honored. It's such a privilege for us to continue our partnership that we have with SEPN. We are so proud to be able to see some of the achievements that we have had tonight.
Today was so impactful for me as we launched because we saw different levels of winners from the previous Investor of the Year, from beginners, from newcomers, from youth up to big leagues. For me, it's an inspiration to those that were fearful in entering Investor of the Year.
I want to encourage everybody to enter for the 2026 Investor of the Year and just see how your story can be told to the rest of South Africa.
It is phenomenal. The stories that we hear today, and it's so inspiring that this platform helps entrepreneurs to leapfrog into new opportunities.
I encourage you to really come in and invest and really enter into Investor of the Year because it can really change your life. Just go ahead, take the plunge and get in and register.
The stories of the winners has been awesome. It's inspiring, and that's exactly what SEPN is about. We are very proud to be associated with SEPN as a company, and we look forward to many, many more collaborations moving forward.
Since my journey with SEPN, I've been on a growth path. I have met a lot of people who are also willing to invest in my deals. I have had doors open for me, more opportunities, and I just love being a part of the SEPN community.
It was fantastic to listen to the amazing stories that these category winners and contestants shared with all of us. So this is a fantastic journey.
We are so looking forward to 2026 Investor of the Year. We want to see who's going to take away all the prizes and who's going to be the main champion. So please get your entries ready and submit.
Guys, what an evening here at Villa Bianca, the launch of 2026 Investor of the Year. We have partners, sponsors, previous entrants, even future entrants entering. This is such a great initiative for all South Africans in the property space. So I urge you, take that next step into Investor of the Year, build your profile, because remember, credibility meets opportunity. It's not always who you know, it's who knows you.
Oh, good afternoon, ladies and gents, and my name is Daniel Kazadi. Welcome to the 2026 Investor of the Year led podcast known as Beyond the Deal, where we will be talking to individuals that are heroes in the property sector, but that started their property journeys like any one of us and have gone around and done some phenomenal stuff in the property sector. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, thank you, and let me know in the comment section where you are watching me from. Are you in Joburg, Cape Town? Are you down in Durban? Please let me know down below. But like I said, welcome to an Investor of the Year led podcast where we will be talking to Mr. Rob Tsekoa in a few moments. But for those of you that have never heard of the Investor of the Year competition, this is the fifth edition of the competition where we are gearing towards and heading all full steam ahead towards the 19th of September, where we are going to be crowning the overall Investor of the Year. So if you do not know of the competition, we run this competition every couple of years, where it's all about celebrating investors doing some beautiful things in the property sector. So whether you're a beginner, whether you are an intermediate investor or a big league investor, we have this competition for all different categories to enable you to be the overall Investor of the Year winner. So last week we did have a few individuals that were being judged and they did enter for the competition. Namely, there was Mr. Kenneth that presents his Airbnb opportunity. There was Mr. Frank that was doing a development. There's Jacques that is also doing a massive development, and Michael Brink as well, who's doing student accommodations. But ladies and gents, we are going to be announcing which of these 4 individuals are making it past round 1 and to round 2. We will be doing an announcement a bit later on. But for the session today, colleagues, without further delay, we are going to be having a chat with none other than Mr. Rob Tsekoa, Rob T. Tsekoa. And a bit about Rob. Rob is a property investor, an award-winning property investor. He did enter the last Investor of the Year 2024, where he was the overall winner of the intermediate category. So Rob is a successful property investor, a business coach, a keynote speaker. He is also, because he has a lot of time on his hands, he was elected recently to sit on the board of one of the biggest organizations in the property sector known as Rebosa. He's a director of Rebosa. He is the founder of his own property agency, hashtag Properties, and that agency, ladies and gents, is involved or was involved in 1 billion rand worth of sales. So he is quite successful, and it is such an honor and a privilege to have Rob with us. But Rob, can you hear me? Are you out there, my brother? Okay, so Rob's network here, we're just battling with Rob's network. But again, let me know where you are joining me from. I do see, Rob, you are back. Can you hear me?
Dan, I can hear you clearly. I think the connection was glitching a bit, but we are sorted now.
No, that's perfect, my brother. So we went through your intro and everything that you've done in the industry, in your life. Super impressive, brother. First of all, thank you for making time to speaking to myself and the viewers. But maybe as a starting point, Rob, like I said, we went through your entire bio. I mean, being a director and board member at Rebosa, award-winning property investor, 1 billion rand in sales with hashtag Properties. It's quite impressive. But let's maybe start at the beginning, Rob. Have you always been in business? How did that business bug sort of start for you?
Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to SAPN. Thank you to APSA, your partners. It's incredible. I don't know if one wants to say that entrepreneurship and the journey to it, you're either born or you grow into it. In my case, I think it was an element of it makes sense, if I may. It linked up, and perhaps maybe it's in the genes. You know, my granddad himself was a pure entrepreneur. My mom herself is an entrepreneur. So I guess I can't take all the credit for it. My granddad was actually in radio, and my granddad was in radio, but he was in a radio station and ran multiple businesses where he was a wholesaler and also in the retail space where he sold clothing and material. So it's actually not new, actually. So perhaps maybe it does run in the blood.
Hey, perhaps it does run in the blood. Maybe let's dive a bit more, Rob. So talk to me about your upbringing. Were you born in Joburg? Did you come to Joburg? Where did you spend time in your schooling times?
You know what, Dan, I'm an East Rand kid, you know. Grew up in the East Rand, schooled in the East Rand. I started my primary school in the Alberton area at a school called South Hills Primary, which has now changed to Crestview Primary, and later completed my primary school in Dawn Park Primary. And then I went to a predominant Afrikaans school called Hoërskool Voortrekker. So I'm a Regtevoorrie, you know. So my integration into society is an interesting one of diverse culture, integration. And what has stood out for me as a child is that society works on merit. You know, where merit is, you would be recognized, irrespective of color. And that speaks true to a changing South Africa. And yeah, so most of my life I've been in the East Rand, Force Larissa. So if anyone is basically from Force Larissa, shout out to you. A little bit of my time, a little bit of my youth in Togoza, and a lot of it in Dawn Park. So if anyone knows Dawn Park, you would know that the struggle or the activist Chris Hani was actually gunned down there. So there's a lot of history from that place, and that's actually where I grew up.
Oh, perfect. So you grew up that side. So now let's maybe go on the journey. So you went through high school at sorry, I forget the name of the actual high school.
It's a difficult one. So it's Hoërskool Voortrekker.
Hoërskool Voortrekker.
The difficult one.
After your high
Yes.
school, talk to me about your journey after that. Did you go into university? What did you sort of study? Because I want to sort of pin like your first entrepreneurial venture and how we up in the property space.
Then you know what? I think having the conversation from where I was born and where I come from, schools that I actually attended, will thread in well with what you're trying to put in. So I think there's a leadership thing that one has that they're actually born with. Yeah, some can grow it, but some are actually born with. In primary school, I was a prefect, top 10 student. I was vice captain of the Scholar Patrol. In high school, I was basically what you call a deputy head prefect, so vice chairperson of the RCL and the Service Council, and played rugby. So the world didn't need another Cheslin Colby, you know, and I think mine was, perhaps maybe I could have been an athlete, you know, but we have Wade. Wade van Niekerk is doing well. You know, he runs the race. That was my special race. The 400 is a good combination of middle distance and short. That was one of my favorite races. But Wade's been there. You know, we've got Wade now. And having played rugby, I was a wing. And we have Cheslin Colby. So the world doesn't need another Cheslin Colby. Nor does it need another Wade van Niekerk. But the world could do with a Rob T, you know, South Africa could do with a child of the soil that starts a business from scratch and then builds it. So from there, from high school, I then go into university, but not directly. So I start working. So I start working for Standard Bank in my early days in the Sandton area. So I get 3 interviews to join Standard Bank, and one is in the financial advisory side, one is in the Germiston area, and one is in Sandton. So I chose the one that paid the most.
Hey, as any young man would, eh?
Of course. But in so saying, then, I think the banking sector was my vehicle to getting a tertiary qualification. As one of 3 kids, I understood that my mom would obviously not afford me the opportunity to go to university. And I obviously had the privilege of working really early in my life. And that was such a great exposure into the market. And that's where I say the stars aligned. You know, you're looking for that point that says, at what point did you decide that entrepreneurship was actually your thing? I think working in the bank, like I stated, when I was in high school, I was probably basically part of everything: sports, culture, public speaking, you name it, I was part of it. So when I went into the working world, the same attitude and the same work ethic kind of applied. So when I worked in the bank, I was part of the social committee, I was part of transformation. Anything that the bank offered, I was part of. So that helped my escalation and my promotions in the bank. I moved quite rapidly into senior positions as a result of just being a part of everything with enthusiasm and excitement. And obviously in university, my majors were accountancy. And I know if I say accountancy, then you can smile, you know, a bit, you know. Accountancy and management were my majors. And in my second year, I dropped accountancy for psych. And I realized that society needs to be understood. As a young person, 20 years old in a bank where you are dealing with people that are older than you, one needed to have a competitive advantage. And I thought the competitive advantage was certainly being able to understand human behavior and understand the integration of it in a working space. So I then had psych as one of my majors, which was the best decision I ever made. Because here's what's true: the numbers will always add up. You know, if there's a formula, there's a method for it. They'll always. But human beings are very tricky. You know.
Numbers
So
never lie.
one having majored. Come again.
The numbers never lie, hey?
The numbers never lie, you know, and they follow a particular method. And because I understood that numbers will always add up, I could just tap into a humanity subject that spoke to human behavior directly. And I will always visit accountancy as I am now, you know, as a career path, which I'm linking with the law, and that's working well as well. So, but psych has been such an important component in my career, how I interact with people, how I do business. And perhaps maybe that is the fundamental element that kind of steered me into, perhaps you've got the personality and you've got the character for being an entrepreneur.
Okay, Papa. So you're a young man, you start working in Standard Bank, you climb up the corporate ladder. While doing that, you're in varsity. I mean, combining the two is quite difficult, right? But talk to me, fast forward on, you then ventured into business. I'm going to talk about that transition period now, on what was your first business you ventured into after varsity? Was it during varsity? And then talk about the property sector, how you then transitioned towards that.
Fantastic. So then it actually stringlined. So from banking, just before I do my third year in university, I decide that I need to make a decision and see what gives. So either I remain in banking and keep an average of 60 as my university marks, or decide on leaving work and go do a phenomenal third year so I can do honors and masters in the future. So I resigned from the bank on a Friday. Friday afternoon, I get a call from the insurance sector, which is Liberty, saying, hey, we need a business coach for the insurance side. Would you be interested in coming along? So I leave the bank on a Friday, and I'm back on Monday in the insurance sector, and I'm working with financial advisors. So that comes into my space as in the insurance space, where I act as a coach and part-time paraplanner to financial advisors. And it becomes the realization of, I could have the skills to be a business coach. And that's where it starts, because they were looking for somebody who had the skills of the banking, but also helping with sales. And that's where the coaching element of it came in. Worked with a few financial planners that did exceptionally well. And I thought, there's a niche in the market. You know, being a business coach could help. While I was being a business coach, I was finishing off my degree. Obviously, being a coach helped me to have time to focus on studies. Long story short, I was doing a coaching session for a bank. And they unfortunately could not pay the fees that I was charging, and they got an attorney firm to actually sponsor the difference. And that attorney firm was NGL Attorneys. And they sponsored the difference and said to me, hey, Rob, we love what you're doing. We love what you're doing with the sales consultant. Could you do what you do with them in real estate? And I said, it's sales. And that's how I entered into the real estate space. I obviously had friends in the real estate space that were doing relatively well. You know, as a banker, I was up probably at 5, you know, going to work. And I was thinking to myself, these realtors, they're not even up yet. You know, when I come back home, they're all relaxed. And I'm saying, I'm working so hard and these guys are making more money than what I am. So it was always a lingering element that real estate could be an avenue. And obviously, having been a banker, working in insurance, the common thread there is property, you know. So banking, we did a lot of banking in the private banking sector. You'd understand that that net worth or that layer of clients is aware that property is a vehicle that can be used. So I dealt a lot with property transaction as a banker. And then in the insurance sector, I was insuring property. And thereafter, I worked for the legal sector, having worked for NGL Attorney as a strategic marketing manager for them. And that basically led me into saying, there's a need for a platform in real estate that can help entrepreneurs become their own businesses. And that's how I jumped into real estate. So there was a coaching element that came into play. And then there was an element that said, hey, entrepreneurship could be it. And it was sad, to leave my employer, having been employed for all that time and wanting to go on your own, thinking, I got a degree now behind my back. I've got an idea of what I'm doing. Let me jump into this. And going into real estate was one of the scariest things one can ever do, especially if you yourself were not a realtor. So coming in with sales experience and saying, listen, here's what I want to do and it's going to work. Oh, thank God, my goodness, thank God it worked. Dan, it could have collapsed under my feet. It could have been a disaster. But my then employer, Mr. Lowe, said to me, you good? How are you good? You've worked with us for 2 years and you've done some phenomenal things. You've introduced some things, but this space of real estate is a different animal. Are you sure?
It is.
And I said to him, I'm going to give it a shot. I think I got the wherewithal to kick it.
I mean, it was a big risk, leaving a constant, stable salary towards being a real property practitioner in today's terms. Is quite a big risk to take. And I do want to dissect when hashtags property group came about. But before I do that, ladies and gents, once more, good afternoon to all of you. Please drop us a like, comment, and subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube, for those of you that are watching on Facebook, please drop us a like and a follow on the Investor of the Year page. Joining us is none other than Mr. Robert T., where we are talking about his entrepreneurial journey. And a bit later on in the next few minutes, we are going to also be announcing who has made it through to round number 2 from the individuals that went through round 1 judging last week. But please drop us a like, comments, and subscribe. But back to the conversation, Mr. Rob. Anna talk. So now you've left Standard Bank, you've left the nice income, the highest paying job you could find at the time, to become a realtor, right? To become a realtor. Talk to me, early days being a realtor. How long did it take you for your first transaction to get across the line? Did you instantly do it? Did you hit the ground running, or was there like a transition period? And I don't know how difficult it was to actually become a realtor, because I think the stat says 70% of realtors stop after year 1 because it is extremely difficult. So I don't understand, how did you navigate through it? I mean, you're standing tall now with hashtag properties. Talk to me about the early years being a realtor.
Dan, it's such an interesting dynamic. I want to answer your question in the best possible way. So coming into the real estate space, I was actually not a realtor. So my focus and the business was actually not to sell property, but to actually sell franchises. So I was selling franchises to guys that were selling property. So obviously, because I had worked for an attorney firm and I was in the marketing space, I was exposed to a lot of property practitioners that were saying, I want to try and start my own business. I'm with XYZ company. I want to start my own, but I don't have the compliance in order. I don't have the systems in order, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. And that's where I came in. So I created a platform called Hashtags Properties. And just to give you an idea, so if Dan Kazadi says, listen, I'm working for XYZ Properties, but I've got an NQF4 in real estate, but I want to try run my own thing. Where I am, they're taking 50% of the proceeds. I really want to see if I can try. That is what hashtag was. It was the platform for Dan to come in and say, I'm hashtag Kazadi Properties, and you form part of this big family. So when I did start, so the business started in 2016, within 3 months of the business, under the platform, we had already kicked 15 deals already. So I went for a running machine. Yeah. So within 3 months, we had done 15 deals. So obviously, I was targeting top shooters. I was targeting what we call strikers and people that were already in motion and in business, but looking for opportunities to be their own business and to run their own under this new brand that had come up.
Okay, no, that's beautiful. Talk to me, early years of hashtag properties. Did you hit the ground running? Was it easy? Were there any challenges that you had to go through to get the business up and running?
Absolutely. Early days, it was challenging. Here's why. You come into the space as a young African person and you're trying to come into a space that's already spoken for, a space that is dominated by the big boys, where credibility and legitimacy, if I may, authenticity lies with our other counterparts, the minority, which is the white people. And then you come in and you try and say, well, there's something I can offer in this in the business. It's approached and received with skepticism, and it's often basically very rejected unless you've got the knowledge. And for me, in my case, the stars had aligned, having been in banking and insurance and having worked for the attorneys, it was easy for me while discussing or pitching the idea for people to realize, hey, Rob actually knows what he's talking about, and he's from the attorneys. So there is some legitimacy here. And, having knowledge and having the ability to work with it was my advantage. The disadvantages was it took very long to convince people to come on board. So the wheel starts turning very, very slowly because people want to see if Dan will come in. They want to see if John will come in. They want to see if Mary that works for, say, Remax will bite and jump on because the commission split is good. And now you are your own business. You're not an agent under an existing agency. And because it's new, there's a lot of resistance. But through consistency, it worked. So the challenges were the system that I wanted to work with didn't exist in the industry. I was trying to work with the system that catered for a branch franchise model in real estate and have different levels of authority in terms of who worked the system. So if I brought hashtag Zadi Properties, and Dan had 3 agents under him, wasn't the ideal thing, but it's what industry had at that time. So the challenges was not having an adequate system that could basically enable a growth, number one, and budget, the capital to actually get it out there. I was basically just marketing it according to the funds that I had. And that in itself becomes difficult, So when you decide that you're an entrepreneur and you decide that you're going to remortgage or take funds against your own property to prove a goal, I think sometimes one might think that you need to be a little bit loony, to really go into entrepreneurship, because you need to believe beyond everything that it's going to work. You cannot be convinced that it won't work. So any thought or any vibes with regards to it won't work need to not exist in your mind. So your goal and your focus should be, this will work, come what may.
Geez, come what may. And you did refinance your property to cash flow yourself through it. Geez, that's quite something, hey? And during this period, what would you say was the turning point of the business, being actually from a startup to being established the way it could pay its own expenses and sort of repay all the investments and the faith you put in at that point in time?
Dan, the turning point was after 3 years of having between 4 to 6 appointments every day. I think I was running around like a mad hatter on appointments. My average was about 5.5. I don't know how you have half an appointment, but when I do the numbers, it gives me 5.5 appointments every day with property practitioners, then agents, and seeing them, trying to convince them that this is the business for them. So if you really think about it, if you're meeting between 30 and 35 people, basically on a weekly basis, trying to convince them that you can start your own business every day, all the time, and then it hits when your accountant says to you, you're making profit. Oh my goodness. You haven't an idea what it means for an entrepreneur when you break even. When you break even and you're able to then say, okay, I've got a payroll now. I can pay this one. My salary can come in. I can pay the rent. I can pay my admin. I can pay my marketing division. And then that aha moment that this was worth it. But 3 years of consistency and just pushing on to make it happen is just phenomenal. It gives me goosebumps telling you now that when it happened, it was a call from my accountant saying, you've made some profit, you've been pushing this thing. It really didn't, you want to jump out of your skin, you want to do it worked, Yeah. So that is that moment, if you've ever experienced that, it's just like opium in your system. It's like a drug, man. You just want to keep having it. And from there, you're almost like bulletproof. Now you're untouchable. Now you're like, okay, what's next? Let's set these goals higher than what we set them on initially. And you moving and your business partners are like hashtags properties. Oh, there's a company called hashtags properties. Oh, there's a T guy behind it. Looks like he's doing well. He's able to take agents, and now you've bought legitimacy in market because Dan is in the business, Tom's in the business, Jerry's in the business, Susan is in the business, Johan is in the business, and you just need to say, you know what? Here's my pitch. If you're doubting anything, call any of these guys that are on board, and then it flows. That's momentum, and that is just such a feeling of excitement, and it was worth doing this. The struggles, the pain. We're not talking about the months when you're not able to pay rent. We're not talking about the months when you yourself don't have a salary and you've short paid your admin. We're not talking about what do you do when you don't have petrol in your car? But I guess this is why I say one needs to be a little bit loony, for you to go into this, and you need to be headstrong, and your belief needs to fuel you. And the truth of it is, I think to a greater extent, one needs to believe in a higher power. If one doesn't have the element of faith and you don't believe in God or whatever it is that you regard as God, at times when you have a quiet moment, you need to be able to say, dear God, this idea you planted into my head, not for me to fail, but for me to learn. But in my case, I want to make profit. So I was straightforward with the man upstairs to say, this could be a learning curve, but at this point, I appreciate the learning. I need to bank money, I need to make profit. Yeah, I need to make profit, and I guess that was the constant prayer, and that was it's a new idea. It doesn't exist in the market. You're creating something that's never been done. It is doubted, but you yourself need to first believe in it, and then soldier through.
Geez, that's so inspirational. So we're talking of having a corporate job, which you then chose to leave to focus on entrepreneurship. You start your entrepreneurial journey, hashtag properties, having to mortgage your home to try to pay for staff, to pay for your admin, and that almost runs out. You start short paying on your staff, not having money for fuel. And I think you mentioned something that is quite beautiful, because most people think entrepreneurship's easy, number one, hey? I think we might be to blame for that, where we don't share some of the realities of what some people have to go through to become award-winning entrepreneurs, and to then do that. So you spoke of your faith being a large reason why you've ended up making it to where you are right now. If you had to, I think now we're going towards closing the conversation, and we'll talk about what you're doing now and where hashtag property is. One more thing that played such a massive role in enabling you to get through the difficult moments. What would you say that is?
Then it's not one singular thing. It's not one single thing. I always say there's a saying that resonates with me that says, good, better, best. Never let them rest until good is better and better is best. But that only works when there's momentum. That only works when there's consistency. So to an entrepreneur that's out there, if you've sat down and you've done your feasibility study and you've chosen this goal that you want to go for, and you need to be relentless at it. You really need to pursue it as if it's the only thing that will buy you the joy that you want and some form of fulfillment. And because it's a goal, you're going to keep working at it. You're going to find new ways. Obstacles come out. When you divert or you try to go over those hurdles and those obstacles, you realize that in them appearing, you learn. So you consistently learn. And as you learn, you realize that there's better ways of doing things. So this is why when you know good, you do good until you know better. And then you do better. When you know better, then you can do the best. I think that's always been, the thing is that in real estate, it exists. The market's there. You just need to find what is my niche. And like I always say, Dan, you've heard me say this, you need to follow your talent. And the world will make space for you. And in my case, that has been the truth. I came into real estate, but I didn't sell property. My focus was coaching guys that were in property, giving them the tools to actually be their own business. And here's what's true: in me struggling, they made more money than I did, Dan. Some of my business partners made more money than I did, and I was holding the fees, holding the fort, making sure everything works. When their commission comes through, we only banked 2% because it was a franchise structure. They kept 98%, we kept 2%. So you can imagine when a deal of 100,000 comes through, and you're only eligible or legally entitled to 2%, and they get 98%. So you imagine that you can see this movie. The money's moving, but you need to stay true to what it is that you've committed to. You're cycling all this money and it's moving past you, past your bank account, you're transferring it out, accounts is taking care of it, and then you realize this is what I chose. I need to stick to it and see it through.
Just such a loaded piece of advice from what you've told me. Hey, there's consistency, there's staying true, being patient with yourself during the difficulties. Such a loaded response, and thanks for that. As we're wrapping up, my bro, so fast forward, Hashtag Properties now sold over 1 billion, has made over 1 billion rand in sales. A growing team, one of the fastest growing franchises in its own space. You then did a transaction where you became a developer, right? That led to you entering for the Investor of the Year competition, and led to you being an award-winning entrepreneur to almost cement what you already knew, right? That you're good at what you do now. The rest of the country just needed to know about it. Talk to me about the rest of your journey now with Hashtag Properties. What are you guys planning on? What are some of the exciting things you guys are looking to do? And I want you to talk about the actual Investor of the Year competition as well that you entered, what that has done for you, where you are, and talk about the rest of your journey. What's next for Mr. Rob T?
Fantastic. Dan, thank you for that. It's so interesting, Dan, that we are kind of going through this journey, and only at this point, so only when Hashtag is now running on its own and it's on autopilot, do I decide that as a former banker, we used to handle the administration of development and clients building and progress payment from the back end. Now I want to do it from the front end. And obviously, I had invested in other people's buildings where they'd come to me and say, Rob, I'm building, I'm busy with my brickwork. I need X amount of money for progress payments to come. I understood all that. So I started participating in that with some of my realtors and some of my partners. And I then decided that I want to do my own. I really want to start doing my own. And that comes in when Hashtag now is on autopilot. When it doesn't need me to be grinding every day. Yes, I'm still having appointments, but you've reached that point where the business can operate without you to a certain extent. And that brought me so much joy. I think when you've worked on something so well and you're able to sit back and see it work, it's a feeling that one can't describe. I think entrepreneurs out there that have built businesses that don't depend on them, they know exactly what it is that I'm speaking about, where the business just flows. So I then decide that, listen, I'm going to go into developments and I'm going to do a serious, I really wanted to do a landmark development, given that I was doing something very different in the residential space, having hashtags. I wanted to do a development that was not just 1 unit, not just 2 units, not just 3. I really wanted to do something that would actually say, I've really put my knowledge and expertise into one particular project and using knowledge to basically gain profit. And that's where it started. So I think the idea is it all comes together, if I may, after like 4 or 5 years when I'm able to put the business on autopilot and I can focus and diversify my offering, see what else I can actually do. And the hashtag business then reaches the 1 billion mark, which becomes a significant mark in the real estate space, for a small business with 72 franchises and 6 of the 9 provinces to reach 1 billion. It is a large milestone, and I don't want to take anything from it. In its respect, it basically summons and demands the respect that it should get. And I wasn't even 35 yet, so I was still youth when we reached the 1 billion mark, and industry basically just went they went berserk when they heard that it's a billion. But a lot of them were like, we've done multiple transactions with hashtag. So industry was like, yeah, they took agents from us, they really almost closed down a sector. So it was becoming the big talk. So when we got to that 1 billion mark, we really needed to have a celebration. And that's where the dominoes come into effect. And this is why I think to myself, the man upstairs had a way of orchestrating this very, very well. Because here's what happens. I win Investor of the Year, intermediate category, and runner-up with SAPN and ABSA. And then the world opens up. And then everything. So understand that prior to that, I was in the trenches. I was working every day. I was on site, I was still having meetings. And now after this win, the world knows Rob T. I got people that say hi to me that I don't know. I'm like, where do you know? You're like, you Investor of the Year, guy. I'm like, yo, no, but intermediate, I'm category winner. They're like, nah, Investor of the Year. I'm like, yeah, Investor of the Year for intermediate. I'm run up. I needed to always explain that I'm not Patricia. Rob is runner up. Patricia was the all-round winner. But nonetheless, from that, I was appointed as an honorary member of Robosa. So Robosa said they thought this guy made 1 billion. He's now intermediate investor of the year, made me an honorary member of the organization. So I wasn't director. I was given an invite to be part of Robosa. And I thought, my goodness gracious, to get an invite from Jan Leroux, Andrew Golding, Tony Clark, Adrian Goslet saying, Dan would like you to be our member, And I thought, that is a single event that is just such an honorable thing to get an invite to become part of one of the biggest bodies in real estate. And I thought, wow, they see me, this little minion that exists in their space, and I'm back now to the 1 billion mark. This is now fast forward 2025. And this is now when I'm a board member of Robosa and director. And I sit with Adrian Goslet, who's Southern Regional Manager for Remax. So Remax Southern, and I say to him, Adrian, we're so far behind as people of color in the real estate space because you guys do you do 1 billion volume of sales, 1 billion Remax South Africa in 7 to 15 days. It takes the best of us 7 years. Jeez. It takes the best of us 7 years in what they do in 7 days. If we can put it in that. So I said, real estate South Africa still needs a face. They need a face that says, because Rob T did it, he looks like an ordinary guy from the East Rand, went to public school. Yeah, went to Wits University, but okay, let's put that aside. He's an ordinary G. If he can do it, so can we. So that was an element of inspiring a people of color who otherwise thought that real estate might not be reachable. And obviously, after being intermediate winner, it demands you to start participating in multiple activities. And from there, Dan, from just winning that, being director of Robosa, I think the man upstairs is now showing off because my word, I cannot account for the stuff that comes afterwards. Robosa then has a function in Kenya and Nigeria, which is part of the NAR, National Association of Realtors, which is a real estate body in the US that represents over 1.5 million property practitioners globally. And my board says, Rob, because you're Investor of the Year, why don't you represent us in Nigeria for bilateral communications or bilateral relations with ABSA? And I was like, sorry, me? I've just joined the board. They're like, you're the most capable guy. Come on. You're the motivational speaker guy. Go to Africa, stand behind your flag or sit behind your flag and do us proud. And so I did. Went to Kenya, mingled a bit in Kenya. It was beautiful. Went to Nigeria, represented South Africa. And part of it was, I'm Rob T. Tsekoa, director of Robosa, winner of Intermediate Investor of the Year back home. So if you're really looking for credit, this guy is in developments. Not only am I selling existing properties, but I promise you through saying that, ministers from Angola, human settlements, housing, they call it housing that side, ministers from Namibia. I got to sit on the same table, and they're like, okay, so you are minister of what in South Africa? I said, no, minister. I'm only Rob T, Robosa director, investor of the year 2024 intermediate. They're like, wow, you must be serious business. I said, well, it seems like it, They're like, no, don't downplay it, You are investor of the year, I'm like, oh yeah. It's a thing, But and I just for that one moment, sitting with people that are ministers, sitting with the son of the Nigerian of Nigeria, Tinubu, and he's sitting there, and I'm saying, Dr. Tinubu, he says, no, man, don't call me doctor. And, yes, I know my surname. My dad's the president, but I'm sitting here in my real estate capacity. And I thought to myself, what has this done for me as an individual, as an African child, to be at a table where they're like, and then, who's this? Are you from South Africa? Yes, I am. Well, what ministry? No, he's investor of the year and he's with Rebosa. Who's Rebosa? But he's investor of the year? Yeah, what's happened back home? This guy is the big shot. And I had an opportunity to sit with these important people, speak behind my flag, and basically have such presence, authority, just because I had two titles that I could state right there and then, not having to explain that, oh no, I run a real estate business back home. No. Just those two elements helped me to have photos, even with the president-elect, of the NAR, all the bodies that were there, having lunch with them. And I thought to myself, have I really, is this the I've arrived moment? And I thought, no, my bank account doesn't say I've arrived. So there's still a lot of work to do.
So you still have to work, eh?
So my bank account, my bank account's still there. So subsequent to that, the Rebosa board appointed me, or I also got an invite to serve on the NPPC, which is the National Property Practitioners Council. And now I've also been nominated and elected again to serve on another board, which is the PSCC, but on the technical side of it. So I've got the trio now, I sit on Rebosa, I sit on the council, and now I'm part of the charter and the technical department. It's an absolute honor, and I can't say anything but just thank God that this journey worked. If it works, it must work to inspire a generation that has interest in real estate and to inspire the ability and the thought that it can be done.
I think you said something, to just sum up everything. First of all, Rob, such an inspiration. Hey? So inspired. And this is the reason we do this for everyone that is watching. Number one, to understand that it doesn't happen overnight. So you spoke of your time, having to go through your business, 5 years for it to be finally in a place for you to do other things and do a development. And then that led to you joining Investor of the Year, but not just for yourself. South Africa has many things, but what it needs more of is someone like Rob Team, who grew up in the same streets that we grew up in and ran on the same street and literally backed himself and believed in himself. And I think you said something beautiful because you already had the credibility, Rob, but all you needed was the opportunity. And that's where Investor of the Year, I think our overall theme comes into play, where it is where credibility meets opportunity. It's not always about who you know, but who knows you. And as a result of everything you've done, Rob, I think there's no one more deserving in the country to sit on all those boards. And I know it will add the value that is needed to move the industry forward. I know you and I can probably talk on for more hours and stuff. But Mr. Rocky, I know you are quite busy. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there maybe last piece of advice you'd like to leave the audience with before I then announce who has made it through to round number 2 from the individuals that were judged last week? And then I also talk about how you can enter for the Investor of the Year competition as well.
Fantastic. Dan, thank you for the opportunity. I want to say congratulations to the guys that have made it to the second round, and keep pushing, guys. All the best. We're awaiting the new winner of Investor of the Year and the various categories in play. And I think mine is set your goals, let them scare you. There's a power that lies within us that is greater than what we are, and like I said, one needs to believe in a higher power, and you will not be denied in a space when you have the credibility. So follow your passion. Like I always say, follow your passion and the world will make space for you, as it has for me. And honestly, from my heart, I really want to speak to people in the real estate space and say, real estate is such a crucial element in our industry, and there is time where we really need to start and making things move in our real estate space. The number of people of color in the real estate space, we're still in the minority, which doesn't make sense given our demographics, but that I know we will sort out in time. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to you, Dan. Thank you to Andrew Walker for a phenomenal program and a platform called Sapin, where property investors can come into the same space, learn, collaborate, and be able to better themselves. I want to say thank you to APSA, because you know why? My story matters. Thank you, Dan.
Your story matters, brother. Thank you so much. May God bless you. I'll touch base with you. Ladies and gents, that was Rob T. Tsekoa, you can follow him on all social media platforms. And do let me know in the comment section down below. The reason for Beyond the Deal is to talk to investors that are doing some phenomenal work in the sectors, in real estate specifically. If there's anyone you would like to hear or like me to bring on as a guest, please do comment their name and let's see if we can get it done. But I want to go on to the part you're all waiting for, which is who has made it to round number 2. Like I said, there was 4 individuals last week that did do the judging for round number 1, namely Mr. Kenneth, Mr. Frank, Mr. Jacques, as well as Mr. Michael Brink. So which of them are making it to round number 2? And I'm glad to announce, ladies and gents, that all 4 individuals will be making it to round number 2 judging. And round number 2 will be in-person judging. So we are doing a roadshow, a Sapin roadshow. But for those of you, again, ladies and gents, that would like to enter for the Investor of the Year competition, I'm going to ask the team to just drop the link in the comment section down below, both on YouTube as well as Facebook. Please do enter the competition. The overall winner, we are super excited to announce that the overall a cash prize to the sum of 100,000 Rand in cash, a weekend away at one of the most luxurious places you can go in South Africa as well. And please do join me next week for more round 1 judging. We're going to have more individuals that will be judging. You can visit our website at www.investoroftheyear.co.za to either enter or nominate someone else to run for the actual competition. So please enter your deal, whether a small deal, whether a big deal. Again, ladies and gents, there's different categories from the beginner category, intermediate, and most growth categories. So you are judged in your own lane. So you're not going to be competing with someone doing 100 million Rand development if it's your very first deal as well. So ladies and gents, that is myself, Daniel Kazadi. Please do join me next week for more Investor of the Year judging. But for me, to all of you, goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you next week, Thursday, same time, same place. Thank you so much.